Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Bodhisattva Nam Sankirtan. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. We all survived. Those of you who have, this is the morning after spending a night in a completely new place. You woke up this morning thinking, where am I? If you couldn't find the light switch, then you got a bit desperate. And there's no idea where the temple was. You got increasingly desperate. Some of you had to walk, I believe. You had to walk over Scottish mountains and down hills. And where were you?
I don't know, about 20 minutes walk. The other side of the valley.
The other side of the valley. Okay. Fantastic. Anyway, thank you so much for making the effort to come. We will be here for a few days, and you will become gradually accustomed to the beautiful temple of Karuna Bhavan and its wonderful devotees. The reason we're here, of course, is because of the kindness and hospitality of the Scottish devotees, the way in which they have been very, very faithful to Srila Prabhupada's instructions during a very difficult COVID period. And I must say, very faithful to the instructions of the government during the COVID period. And now they've come out of it all smiling. And of course, the most beautiful deities in the United Kingdom, I was going to say England, but in the United Kingdom must be Koda Nitai Mayapur Shashi. So, certainly worth leaving home for. There's a moment when, if you're a newcomer to the Hare Krishna movement, you suddenly get given a pair of kartals and asked to play or to sing a complicated song like that, and it's all written in gobbledygook. It's divine language called Sanskrit, but when you look at it, certainly at 7 o'clock in the morning, you think, no, I can't. But yes, you can, and you can play the kartals, and you can sing, and we can do these things. And suddenly one day you realize it's not you investigating the Hare Krishna movement. You've become the Hare Krishna movement. And that's the only way we can do it. Prabhupada came and just a pair of kartals and a bongo drum that a hippie boy had lent him. And that was the famous first kirtan outside in the park. And from that one kirtan, everything has expanded, even to the top of a hill in Scotland. At 7 degrees. I hope you dressed warm. I hope you've got sensible shoes. All right, let's go. So not everybody is here yet. We're expecting quite a few devotees to come today. I think probably double the number. Wonderful. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Is the verse on the screen behind? Yes. Yeah. Just to make things even more complicated, we have a double verse for you. And a very long Sanskrit phrases. We're reading from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is chapter 17, and these are verses 22 and 23. Yasyadya asid guna vigraho mahan. Yasyadya asid guna vigraho mahan. Yasyadya asid guna vigraho mahan. Next line. Vijnana Dishnyo Vijnana Dishnyo Bhagavan Aja Kila Vijnana Dishnyo Bhagavan Aja Kila Vijnana Dishnyo Bhagavan Aja Kila Yatsambhavo Ham Yatsambhavo Ham Trivrata Swatejasa Yatsambhavo Ham Trivrata Swatejasa Vaikarikam Tamasam Aindriyam Srije Vaikarikam Tamasam Aindriyam Srije. I'm going to spare you. We shall do one verse and then I'll read the second verse. Yasyadya asit guna vigraho mahan. Yasyadya asit guna vigraho mahan. Vijnana Dishnyo Bhagavana Jakila. Vijnana Dishnyo Bhagavana Jakila. Yat sambhavoham trivrita swatejasa. Yat sambhavoham trivrita swatejasa. Vaikarikam tamasam Aindriyam srije. Vaikarikam tamasam Aindriyam srije. And this verse continues, or these two verses continues. Etevayam yasya vashe mahatmana stita shakunta iva sutra yantritaha mahanaham vaikrita tamasendriyaha srajama sarve yadanugrahadidam. Let's do the word for word. Yasya, from whom, Adya, the beginning, Asit, there was, Guna Vigraha, the incarnation of the material qualities, Mahan, the total material energy. Got the wrong glasses. Vijnana, of full knowledge. Dishnya, the reservoir. Bhagavan, the most powerful. Aja, Lord Brahma. Kila, certainly. Yet, from whom? Sambhava, born. Aham, I. Trivrita, having three varieties according to the three modes of nature. Swatejasa, by my material strength. Vaikarikam, all the demigods. Tamasam, material elements. Aindriyam, the senses. Srije, I create. Does it have the rest of the words up there? Yep, okay. Ete, all of these. Vayam, we. Yasya, of whom. Vashe, under the control. Maha Atmana, great personalities. Stita, situated. Shakunta, vultures. Eva, like. Sutra Yantrita, bound by rope. Mahan, the Mahat Tattva. Aham, I. Vaikrita, the demigods. Tamasa, the five material elements. Indriya, senses. Srajama, we create. Sarve, all of us. Yet, of whom? Anugraha, by the mercy. Idam, this material world. Translation. From that Supreme Personality of Godhead appears Lord Brahma, whose body is made from the total material energy. The reservoir of intelligence predominated by the passionate mode of material nature. From Lord Brahma, I myself am born as a representation of false ego known as Rudra. By my own power, I create all the other demigods, the five elements and the senses. Therefore, I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than any of us, and under whose control are situated all the demigods, material elements and senses, and even Lord Brahma, and I myself like birds bound by a rope. Only by the Lord's grace can we create, maintain, and annihilate the material world. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Being. Did everybody want to repeat that? Phrase by phrase. Mary, you have a good voice. Could you read that off phrase by phrase for us, please?
From that Supreme Personality of Godhead appears Lord Brahma, whose body is made...
Just phrase by phrase. We'll repeat it.
From that Supreme Personality of Godhead...
From that Supreme Personality of Godhead
appears Lord Brahma, whose body is made from the total material energy. The reservoir of intelligence, predominated by the passionate mode of material nature. From Lord Brahma, I myself am born. As a representation of false ego, known as Rudra. By my own power, I create all the other demigods, the 5 elements, and the senses. Therefore, I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than any of us, and under whose control are situated all the demigods, material elements and senses, and even Lord Brahma, and I myself, like birds are bound by a rope. Only by the Lord's grace can we create, maintain and annihilate the material world. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Being.
Thank you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A summary of creation is given in this verse. From Sankarshan, Mahavishnu expands. And from Mahavishnu, Garbhodaya Vishnu expands. Lord Brahma, who was born of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, fathers Lord Shiva, and from whom all other demigods gradually evolve. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu are incarnations of the different material qualities. Lord Vishnu is actually above all material qualities, but he accepts control of Sattva Guna, the mode of goodness, to maintain the universe. Lord Brahma is born from the Mahat Tattva. Brahma creates the entire universe, Lord Vishnu maintains it, and Lord Shiva annihilates it. The Supreme Personality of Godhead controls all the most important demigods, especially Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, exactly as the owner of a bird controls it by binding it with a rope. Sometimes vultures are controlled in this way. Magyana Timanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Meditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. It's great to see you all in the flesh and bone and muscle and sinew and tissue and hair and fat. Usually I get to, over the past couple of years, it's just been Zoom. I don't mean that I've been rushing around. It's all been virtual and online and digital, or else it's been Cisco WebEx, but we've been communicating in this way. So it's very nice to be back with devotees again. Hare Krishna. You get to appreciate devotees. You get to appreciate their company even more when you cannot have it. Isn't it, Laura? When you're stuck in a devotee-less, God-forsaken city like Aberdeen. Just see one person. This has been everybody's cry since the beginning. 12 years I was involved in, my wife and I were involved in mail order service and customer services. It was really reader services, it was called. Because the idea was people would get Prabhupada's books on the streets. And revolutionary, the completely revolutionary idea that reader services was started with was that somebody somewhere actually read one of Prabhupada's books and then might have a question about all the unusual language and Brahma, Shiva, vultures pulled by a rope, and Brahma with four heads. Maybe they just have a few questions about all that kind of thing, about the reality of it. And so maybe, they like to write to someone and speak to a human being, apart from the human being that sold them the book. It's a strange idea, wasn't it? So then we looked after people for about 12 years, and we had about 3,000 people who were receiving letters. And, well, in those days there was no internet, so it was just letters. Kids, a letter is a thing that's made of paper. You put it inside an envelope, then you have to get a stamp. And those red things with gaping mouths, those are called post boxes. So everything was done that way. And with that, we developed what we called a congregation. Unfortunately, in those days, it was still only London that they congregated around, because there wasn't much else, in a couple of places in the Midlands. So we were very delighted when the first Scottish temple opened, because, as Mary will tell you, and as all the Scots will tell you, Scotland is a country. It's its own nation. We may not have royalty anymore, but by God, we'll get some if we get independence. So every country should have at least one temple. And just as the sun is surrounded by a solar system of different planets, so every temple needs to be surrounded by a solar system of satellite centers reaching out. Now, the difficulty is that when I first became a devotee, they said, you come and live in George Harrison's house in the country. Liars. I was looking for George Harrison, he wasn't there. And kids, George Harrison was a musician. And I said, who is the Hare Krishna movement? Where is the Hare Krishna movement? Well, they said, well, you're it. And I got the shock of my life one time when I was in Edinburgh. And I walked past a plate glass window. And I was only like 2 weeks a devotee, 3 weeks. And I'd shaved my head for the first time. I used to have hair down here, bright ginger hair, and I shaved it all off. Well, I didn't, someone did it for me, because they said, that's what we do. You've got long hair, we cut it off. That's the arrangement. And I was wearing robes, and I think you'll understand why robes are not designed for Scottish weather. They're designed actually for Indian heat. That's why they're made of cotton, folks. Because cotton grows in India, and we make clothing that fits the weather. But you don't wear them in Scotland, except we do if you're a Hare Krishna. So I was freezing cold, and in those days we thought that long johns, or men's underwear, was definitely Maya. It was definitely a trick of the devil to make you turn back into a sense gratifier and an enjoyer of the material world. So it was bare legs and a thin dhoti in Scottish weather. And on that particular day, it was so cold. And I was thinking to myself, what am I doing here? They told me that I would enjoy life. They said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. I'm not happy, and I don't want to chant. So I walked past this plate glass window. And as I looked at my reflection in the window, I saw that I had somebody else's clothes on. Somebody had stolen my trousers. Somebody had stolen my shirt. And instead I was wearing somebody else's idea of how you should dress in Scotland. Someone had stolen my hair. Jai Kodinadai Juji, Mayapur Shashi. Someone had stolen my hair. I didn't have any hair anymore. And I just looked at my reflection And it was not me. It wasn't me. It was someone else staring back from that plate glass window in Edinburgh in 1974. And I had the most uncomfortable feeling that I'd lost myself somewhere, that I'd lost myself. And I was walking and talking what someone else wanted me to say, what someone else wanted me to wear, and what someone else wanted to do with my hair. But it wasn't me. Whoever it was looking back, it wasn't me. That lasted for maybe an hour. And I had to go and sit down and think about life and the universe and everything. And then a devotee do what devotees do. They spoke to me very gently. Sometimes devotees can speak very harshly, but this devotee spoke to me very gently. And he gradually spiraled up my consciousness. He cranked me up so that I was thinking properly. And so here I still am, not too many miles from Edinburgh, still wearing someone else's clothes. Only now they're my clothes. I fully adopted them. I was, just the other day we had a visit from Russell Brand and his group of Alcoholics Anonymous. There was 30 people. And we began with talking about how in order to take to spiritual life, material life is somewhat disassembled. You know, you're like the old song that we used to sing in the Hare Krishna movement. His old self had to die for him to be a butterfly. How does it start? I forget. Anyway, it's about a man that woke up. It's about a caterpillar. Yeah.
Caterpillar changed his mind.
Caterpillar changed his mind and woke up one morning to find his old self had to die for him to be a butterfly. The idea is the old self has to die. But we try to keep hold of the old self because it served us well. I was a caterpillar and I was quite happy as a caterpillar. You're trying to make me into a butterfly. Did you realize that when a caterpillar goes into the cocoon, it turns into soup? Everything disappears. It's the most amazing phenomenon in nature. The old self, the old caterpillar, is dissolved. Just the DNA remains. And I think a couple of shoots of the eyes. And from that, everything regrows in the cocoon until it emerges from the cocoon as a butterfly. This is called metamorphosis. And this metamorphosis takes place between one life and the next. It's already happened to you many, many times. Your old self died, your new self was created in this life based on a package of desires and deserves that you had from your last life and some karmic reactions that need to be played out. And so you adopted that. But the soul and the mind, intelligence and ego sort of reaches into material nature and grabs different bits of DNA, different ears, different eyes, different nose, a couple of legs. And we develop in this way based on the parents that, practically speaking, our previous activities selected. So this is an amazing thing, but it's not always comfortable because we like our last life. We'd grown used to it. 60, 70, 80 years, you get used to something and you don't want to give it up. And so in this life, sometimes there's a shadow hanging over you from your previous life. And it can cause great consternation because people wake up in this life and they're suddenly very troubled by something they don't quite know. In the olden days, we used to go out and we used to tell people, no, we still do, you're not your body. And we get different responses from people. It's a strange thing to say to someone, isn't it? You're not that body. If a person is cynical, they'd say, well, whose body am I then? What do you mean I'm not that body? Of course I'm the body. Look, if I'm not the body, who are you? Who are you to tell me that I'm not that body? So it's a strange phrase, you're not that body. But sometimes we used to find that people are very, very keen on that phrase. And they used to say to us, I know. I've always felt that I'm not that body. I'm trapped. Can I come to your temple and can I find out more? And so, even in the 1970s, men who were trapped in women's bodies, or women who were trapped in men's bodies, they came to us and they wanted to talk it all out. I really feel that I'm a man, said the woman. I really feel that I'm a woman, said the man. So our early devotees in this country were kind of the first transgender counselors, because a very, very strong shadow had been cast over that person's this life from the previous life. But it causes suffering if you cannot live as you have been intended to live. So Kali Yuga, unfortunately, is the place where people get more and more suffering as basically hell. Kali Yuga is hell spiraling towards heaven. You understand? The karmic reactions accumulate so that what would have taken place in the hellish planet takes place in the earth plane. Previously, the earth plane in Satya Yuga, the golden age, people lived a lot longer. There was only one Varna, and people got on well. Sort of like a Jehovah's Witness picture, I suppose. The lions were laying down with the lambs. Everybody was happy. There was peace and understanding and yoga, and everybody knew their relationship to the Supreme Person. However, as the yugas progress, we go from the beauty of spring to the coldness of winter. Color is lost, life is lost, duration is lost, fruits are lost, flowers are lost, everything's lost except just the shape. So you have the shape of a human being in Kali Yuga, but none of the color, none of the mindset, none of the compassion. So all these qualities gradually disappear, compassion and kindness. And enjoyment disappears. Gradually the human body becomes something that it's not even good for enjoyment anymore. At least if you're going to be born in the material world, be born into a human body in which you can enjoy. And then renounce. Both equally opulence. But in Kali Yuga, it means that you can't even enjoy the body. People don't have that much enjoyment. So sometimes people are born literally in the wrong body. A mixed identity that is guaranteed to cause pain, suffering. And then we try to harmonize it for them. We try to make the world into a nicer place for them by accommodating different situations. Then we find that even that doesn't work. Prahlad Maharaj, one of his important verses was that when you try to provide a spiritual solution to a material problem, when you try to provide a material solution to a material problem, you only get another material problem. You ever heard the song, "There's a hole in my bucket"? There's a hole in my bucket, dear Henry, we'll fix it. The song continues, well, what shall I fix it? Well, with some straw. Well, where is the straw? He says, well, cut the straw, fill the hole. With what shall I fill the hole? Well, with an axe. Cut it with an axe. The axe is, not sharp. Well, sharpen it, dear Henry. Okay? Adina's nodding. She's, yeah, I know this one. Below her. Okay. He said, well, sharpen it, dear Henry. And he says, well, what shall I sharpen it? With a stone. With a stone. He said, but the stone is too dry. He said, well, wet it, dear Henry. He said, with what shall I wet it? With water, dear Henry. He said, with what shall I carry the water? With a bucket, dear Henry. It goes back to the beginning. There's a hole in the bucket. Eliza, dear Eliza. Circular song. This is material frustration. Everybody liked that song because it's life. That's life. As soon as you propose a material solution, creating a material solution to a material problem creates another material problem. Creates another material problem. We're having a wonderful meeting, the COP26, taking place. The eyes of the world will be on Glasgow next week, just up the road. Center of the world. So people are depending on Glasgow to solve the world's problems next week. Okay? They're flying in. They're flying in from planes, consuming huge quantities of super ignitable petroleum fluid, which can never be replaced, by the way. So they're flying in from all over the world to talk about climate change. It is a real problem. I'm not a climate change denier, but there is a real problem. But unfortunately, if everybody goes on living the way that we have now chosen to live in the so-called West, we will need 3 entire planet Earths to do that. And the only way you can get back to some sort of normality, some sort of sustainability, is if people reduce their material demands and live a more simple life. And how can you do that? Well, let's find a material solution. No, there's no material solution. It's only a spiritual solution. Only a spiritual solution. Because only Prabhupada said spiritual life and material life, they're like 2 ends of a seesaw. He said, you know seesaw? He said, I used to play seesaw. He said, one end goes up, the other end goes down. One end goes up, the other end goes down. He said, so when material life is high, spiritual life is low. When spiritual life is high, material life is low. The basic idea is that you're supposed to be happy. Okay? If spiritual life makes you happy, you'll find no interest in material life. If material life makes you happy, you won't be interested in spiritual life. Now, the key point is that you have to come to the point of exhaustion. Exhaustion. Material exhaustion. When you've bashed your senses so much with the hammer of material enjoyment that you think, I just cannot go on anymore. Sometimes we have devotees who joined this Krishna consciousness movement at that point. I cannot go on anymore. It's not working for me. So I was describing the group that we had just last week, a couple of weeks ago, Alcoholics Anonymous. They follow 12 principles. You thought you had difficulties with 4 principles. They follow 12. But the 12 principles begin, astonishingly, with the same point that Arjuna has reached in Bhagavad Gita. That's why there's a connection between the two. That I find that I am in the grip of a powerful habit that I cannot control. I have no more power. So the first thing is honesty. Admit that I am in the grip of a power that I cannot control. And the second is that I turn all my problems over to a higher power who I understand in my own way, who can control these things. The first 2 principles. Unless you do those, you can't go through with the other 10. So in the same way, as I was explaining, it's not a very interesting proposition, isn't it? That you should join a group, and as soon as you join the group, someone says to you, you have no power at all. You're weak. You can't control anything, and you're useless. You've reached the end. You've reached the point of despair. There's no hope for you. Okay? Who would join a group of people that would tell you that? Well, the only reason you would join that group is if you were powerfully in the grip of a habit that you couldn't control, like alcohol or narcotics. I was once giving I do a lot of weddings. And about 25 years ago, I was doing a wedding. And at the end of the wedding, the gentleman and his wife came up to me and he said, you know, all of that stuff that you were saying during the wedding, you know, the philosophy bit. I said, yes. He said, that's just what we believe. I said, is it? What do you believe? He said, well, my wife and I were the first people to bring Narcotics Anonymous from America to the UK. We started the first group. And what you said is what we believe. I said, oh, very good, come to the temple. Now, the thing here is that this verse really goes very nicely with this thought that we are pursuing. So even though you might not immediately want to read a book where everybody wants to read a book that's got heroes. People love to read a book about heroes. Well, Bhagavad Gita is a book where the hero turns into an anti-hero, isn't he? Arjuna. He's a chief warrior, but he's a weak man. Well, you've come sort of quite a bit of the way through the book, which is the Mahabharata. And if you've read the Mahabharata up to the point where Bhagavad Gita begins, you know that Arjuna is a very powerful warrior and that he can do anything. He's ambidextrous. He can fire with his right hand, left hand. He can fire in the dark. He can even see any target. He's a very clever warrior. He's not only the best warrior, he's the best of his warrior brothers. And so in this way, we're introduced to Arjuna as a great hero in the Mahabharata. However, when we get to the Bhagavad Gita, his mouth is dry, he's grief-stricken, his knees are buckling, he can't speak, he's crying. You know, who would want to begin a book like that? Who would want to read a book like that? So it just happens that the very moment of Arjuna's change is the moment that Krishna is then able to speak the Bhagavad Gita. So God comes into your life when you've reached the point of, practically speaking, no hope. I was, when I first became a devotee looking after me he was previously a Buddhist, and he'd spent 18 months in Japan. He'd taken a train from London and then Paris, and he'd gone right across Russia. And Russia is very big. Did you know that Russia is very big? It's the biggest country in the world. Did you know that? Huge. It's huge. The other day I was giving class to devotees in Russia, about 100 devotees in Russia. And I said, what's the time in Russia? You know, I'm speaking at 12 o'clock midday. And I said, what's the time in Russia right now? And he said, where in Russia? He said, part of Russia is near Moscow. It's on European time. He said, and part of Russia is near Japan. You know, Vladivostok is out near Japan. So we have positioned this. So I was looking at some devotees, and it was nighttime. I was looking at some devotees, and it was the afternoon. And some devotees, it was still the morning time. And it's one country, folks. Big country. So what was my point? Got carried away.
Like you traveled through Russia.
Huh?
Your friend traveled through Russia.
Yeah, thank you very much, yeah. Thank you, I'm getting old. So he traveled all the way through Russia to Japan, and he spent 18 months in 3 separate monasteries, Buddhist monasteries. And sometimes the senior monks used to beat him with bamboos to make him stay awake during the long periods of meditation. We won't do that today to you. That begins tomorrow. Prabhupada Pran has got the bamboo and he comes and, whoosh, whoosh. So he came back and he was desperate. He was really at the point of spiritual desperation. And he didn't believe in God. So he did Buddhism for 18 months very, very seriously. Couldn't do it more seriously than taking a train to Japan and being beaten by monks in a monastery. But he came back and he said, well, where to now? Where do I go? You know, has to be Eastern philosophy of some kind. Anyway, he got down on his knees. He opened the window and he saw the starry night, saw the moon. He got down on his knees and he said, "Dear God, you know I don't believe in you." That's a way to start a sentence, isn't it? Okay, Janava Priya, you know I don't believe you exist, but can I come to your house for lunch today? So, dear God, you know I don't believe in you. I don't believe in your existence, but if you do exist, can you help me? So this was his prayer. Now this is the prayer of an atheist. This is the prayer of someone who's gone so far with material solutions or mental gymnastics that he can't go any further. So he's appealing to God, a God that he doesn't believe in, who he knows isn't there. He knows absolutely for sure God doesn't exist. But if you do, and this is material life. This is material life. You know, Prabhupada said he told the story. He says there are two Bengali men and they're walking along the canal path and they see a piece of rope. And one man says to the other man, "Oh, look, a rope has been cut with a knife." And the other man says, no, it's been cut with the scissors. He says, "How do you know?" He said, "Well, how do you know it's been cut with a knife?" "Well, how do you know it's been cut with the scissors?" He says, "I think it's been cut with a knife. Definitely been cut with the scissors. Knife, scissors, knife, scissors." And they have a physical fight. And the one who thought it was a knife pushes the other man in the water, and he holds his head underneath the water, and just some bubbles come out. He's trying to drown him. And out of the water comes a hand, and it goes. The Prabhupada said, this is how defiant the material philosopher is. This is how defiant he is. He's drowning, he's dying, he's on the verge of death, and still he believes what he believes. So the point is that we should know when we are beaten. We should know when we are beaten. Because like the person in the grip of a powerful alcoholic habit, like the person gripped in powerful narcotic habit, we are also addicts. We're also addicts. We're also addicted to something. Everybody's addicted to something. Whether it's a jar of honey, whether it's... We are addicts. We're all addicted. And the one thing we're addicted to is the possibility that at some point in my life, things may change and I will find material happiness. That's what we're addicted to. We're addicted to that thought. That somehow or another, Prabhupada said this is like, I don't know, there's ladies present in the room, but Prabhupada said it so I can repeat it. He said there's a certain type of bird, and this bird hops along the ground underneath the back legs of a bull. And the bird is looking up, and he's seeing the bulls, forget the word what Prabhupada said, he's seeing the bulls hanging down. And the bird is looking up and thinking, it is a fish. It will fall. It will fall. So the bird is jumping, wherever the bull is going, the bird is just looking, waiting for the bull's undercarriage to fall so that he said, I will have a feast. He said, so this is material life, he said. This is material life. It will fall sometime. And when it falls, I'm here and I will have a feast. So what will fall? Someday my prince will come. Okay. Someday my prince will come, my princess will come, I will win the lottery. That may happen, but it may not. You wishing it to happen won't make it happen any faster. You imagining that it was going to happen for sure someday won't make it happen any faster. Whatever is allotted to you in this life will come. And it's this remote kind of detached viewing that is the beginning of philosophy. Now in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we're on the 5th now. By the time we get to the 11th, Krishna is still speaking. The Bhagavatam is, what is it? How many chapters? 350 chapters in the Bhagavatam, right? 350 chapters. 90 of those chapters are purely to do with Krishna. That's why we know that the Bhagavatam is all about Krishna, and Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why Bhagavan and Krishna are intimately related as words. But don't think that Krishna's speaking finishes with the 10th canto, because in the 11th canto, Krishna's still talking. He's still got something to say. And he says to Uddhava, just like he said to Arjuna, he says many things to Uddhava. And in fact, it's an entire Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses. The Uddhava Gita is 1200 verses. And he says to him, there's 3 stages of this waking up that we go through. 3 stages of waking up. He said, first of all, a man looks around him and he sees everything is crazy. This world is not, I don't quite fit in here. Unless you can't even begin Krishna consciousness unless you look around and you think, I don't quite fit in here. I don't quite believe what other people believe. I don't quite think the way other people think. Is it just me? Is there anybody else out there? Is there anybody else out there that thinks like this? So this is the first stage. He said, and in this way, a man's mind is his own guru. Your own mind is your guru, because any intelligent person, any spiritually awake person, can look around and think, it's not right, is it? Not right. Not just, it's not right, the politicians. It's not right, the capitalists. It's not right, those criminals. It's not right, those celebrities. It's not right. You know, you can point the finger at other people, but it's everyone. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. Is it just me? Is it just me? And then what happens is that the second stage of realization is that the universe begins to speak to you. The universe begins to speak to you. Because now you're seeing the universe in a different way. You're not seeing the universe as something to enjoy, which is a me-centered universe. The me-centered universe means everything I see, touch, taste, smell, I can either enjoy with it, okay? I can exploit it in some way. You know, it's like a dog. A dog lives in a completely me-centered universe. A dog walks through life, you know. Either I can mate with it, I can eat it, or I can spray it with my urine. Basically, that's the universal view for a dog. Okay, and we pretty much do the same thing. Either I can own it, control it, enjoy it, or fight with it. Just these responses: fight, fright, flight, enjoy. These are the things that we do. The body is made in that way. And humans do the same things as dogs do, as Prabhu used to like to tell us that. He said a dog fights on the street. He said a human fights in the boardroom, or human fights with guns. You know, dog eats anything, but the human will eat. Just the other week, I was reading about a massive case of food poisoning. Massive case of food poisoning. 30 people at a wedding got massive food poisoning, almost died. And what were they eating? There was a little baby pig, you know, on a spit that they'd been roasting. And I was looking and I was thinking, well, yeah, duh. If you want to eat a pig that's been roasted on a flame, but incompletely, you know, what do you expect? And put a dead body of an animal in your stomach. But the one creature which does eat anything, which brings us back to the verse, and I must stop soon, is the vulture. The vulture. And in India, I've had direct experience of vultures, which I told you last time, I think. The vultures were coming to eat me. I was very sleepy one day. We were walking in Vrindavan on the Prikrama, and I'd fallen back because my feet are gentlemen's feet, British gentlemen's feet. They're soft and delicate. They're not meant to be barefoot in the Indian countryside. So I'd fallen back, the head of the party. I was the only Englishman, and everybody else was sort of these hardy Indians. They were walking ahead, a mile ahead. And so what happened is that I saw some vultures circling in the sky, and all I could think of was the old cartoon. I'd never seen vultures before, never seen vultures. So there they were, a long way away. I thought, no problem, birds, I'm not dead. But I remember the cartoon of someone going through the desert and the vultures coming towards him. Anyway, I sat down under a tree, got some shade, and I dozed off. When you doze off, just like that. And I woke up a few seconds later, and the vultures were surrounding me on the ground. And I didn't want to frighten them off. I looked at them through half-closed eyes, and I saw that they were, hopping. And vultures, they think as a group. They think as a cult, as a death cult, literally. so when the leader goes hop, all the other six go hop, 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 hop. So the semicircle was closing in on me. And they have very, very sharp hook bills, very, very sharp hook beaks. And the sulfuric acid in a vulture's stomach is something like 40 times human strength. So they can dissolve anything. They dissolve bones, they dissolve nails, rusty old nail, they dissolve it. It's incredible. Incredible. But they prey on death. They wait till an animal is sometimes almost dead when they come. And one time on another day I saw a dog that had obviously been dead quite some time. Dogs in India, unfortunately, Anapayani, dogs are not looked after very well. It breaks anybody who's got a dog. It breaks your heart when you go to India. You see the way the live dogs are, what to speak of the dead ones. And there's lots of dead ones all over the place. They treat them like rats. And no one can say, in an Indian dog, what breed is it? No one ever asks that question. It's sort of multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. The DNA strain is just, so they actually look like, you wouldn't take them to Crufts. And so traffic dog is crossing the road. In this country, we slow down. Saw a little video the other day of somebody slowing down for a line of ducks. Baby ducks were crossing the road. Not in India. I used to take groups to India, didn't I? Gangadevi actually took them in the end. And I was just one of the visitors, one of the guests. We used to take, and people would get really, really troubled. They love India. They love the beautiful palaces and the temples and the not the wildlife so much as not, but then the thing that really disturbed them was the dogs, especially if they're British. Rudyard Kipling, he said, England is that country where men give names to dogs, and something I can't remember the rest of it, but you give a name to a dog. And he was putting that in the mouth of an Indian who said, "This is such a strange thing. Why would you give a dog a name? Why would you give a dog a name? It's a dog, So unfortunately, they're not treated very well. So there are many dead dogs lying at the side of the road, and sometimes they lie at the side of the road for a few days. And in the hot Indian sun, they continue to grow. But it's not in physical stature, it's just they bloat. And sometimes you'll see the vultures, they eat them in the morning. And it's a disgusting sight. A vulture eating a dog that's been dead for like 3 days. And the smell, my dear ladies and gentlemen, I cannot quite describe the smell. And looking at the vulture, you think, how is it possible that something like that could eat something like that? But they are carrion. They're carrion, that's what they do. And they can digest it. And there is no question of how many bacteria are in that animal, that dead animal. Because The vulture is so strong that it will even dissolve the bacteria. They won't get COVID. They're just incredible. After World War III, there will be cockroaches and vultures. Anyway, this is given as an example that everything and everyone in the material world is on the end of a string, fully controlled. It's something that we don't see in this country. First, we don't see vultures, and we don't see vultures on strings, do we? You ever seen a vulture, Laura, in Aberdeen? You ever seen a vulture on a string in Russia? No, you haven't. But in India, sometimes they catch birds and they put them on a string. There's a very, so it's a very graphic example that people who would read the Bhagavatam would be very sort of conscious of, to see a bird on a string. And there's two examples, and I will finish. The first example is that, elsewhere in the Bhagavatam, we find that the demigods are like the rope, like a bull is tied by the ring around his nose, through his nostrils, on the end of a rope. And so in this way the bull is controlled. Now here we find another thing, how a vulture is controlled by a rope. So this graphic example, which people who read the Bhagavatam would have been able to see very often, is meant to show that you are fully being controlled, and yet maintaining the illusion that you're fully free. Prabhupada said it is like a football. He said, Prabhupada used to play football when he was young at school. He was a goalkeeper. So Prabhupada was saving even then. But he would see the boys kicking the ball. He said, when a football, it is kicked, he said, it is flying through the air. And when the football is flying through the air, the football is thinking, I'm free. Look at me, I'm flying, I'm free. He said, but then when he lands on the ground, again he is kicked. He said, so in the same way, he said, a man is thinking, I'm free, I'm enjoying, oh hey. But again, he lands, after the sense gratification is over, he is kicked. There are many, many examples in Prabhupada's writings about this. Adhokshaja, why don't you tell us the donkey, the beast of burden. What happens to the donkey?
The donkey works all day, just gets a bit of straw.
Yeah. And he's also kicked by the donkey wife. So in this way, Prabhupada says the illusion of enjoyment, the illusion of control is there. And the old example is the bullock cart comes through the village. And as the bullock cart is coming through the village, the dog runs out and he runs under the bullock cart and he goes, row, 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 row. And Prabhupada said, as the dog is barking and the bullock cart is going, the dog is looking and he is thinking, just see, I'm controlling this bullock cart. Isn't that? Dogs do that, don't they? When the car comes, update it. When the car drives down the country road, the dog barks at the car and then turns to its owner and says, see, I scared it off for you. So the illusion is that I'm in control. It's the illusion that I'm in control. But actually you're on the end of a rope. And this turning point, the turning point that begins spiritual life for all of us, is when we can understand I'm not the controller and I'm not the enjoyer. I'm being controlled and I'm being enjoyed. I'm on the end of a rope. And if we can understand that, then we can move forward in spiritual life. Krishna consciousness becomes so much more easy. Let's try and make it a little bit more easy for ourselves. We just have to hold our hands up and we just have to say, I give in. I give in. I'm not the enjoyer, I'm not the controller. And that's what happens when you put on tilak. That's what happens when you put on tilak. When you put on tilak, you're dedicating the body. You're saying, this body is no longer a place of enjoyment, it's a place of service to the Supreme. One time a young man came into the storefront temple in New York. Everybody bowed down. Prabhupada looked at him and he said, you can bow. The boy said, I don't want to bow down. Prabhupada just looked at him and he said, bow down. I don't want to bow down. He said, bow down. He said, why should I bow down? He said, either you bow down now, voluntarily, on your front, or at the time of death, you'll be bowing down in a hospital bed somewhere on your back. He said, better to do it while you're alive. Interesting, yeah? So we bow down. Therefore, the Bhagavatam says that a person is really intelligent if they take the highest part of their body and they put the highest part of their body down, because that will immediately remove pride and inculcate humility. Now, we're still birds on a string, people may say. Or the Guru tells you what to do, or the Shastra tells you what to do, or God tells you what to do. You're still controlled. That is true. But now you're controlled by the Parameshvara, the Supreme Controller, who incidentally has every right to control you. And incidentally, even though you are controlled, you will feel happy. Well, how is that, Mr. Hare Krishna philosopher? How is it that if I'm controlled completely and utterly, I will find freedom? I will find freedom. It's a paradox. Prabhupada said it is a paradox. He said, you wanted God, and what you got was a guru. This is a paradox, he said. Prabhupada did not use that word very often, paradox. It's a great mystery. He said, how is it that when someone stands in front of you and blocks your vision from Krishna, you don't reach Krishna, you can't see Krishna. But how is it when the Guru stands in between you and Krishna, you can see Krishna better? He says, this is a great mystery. So I wanted Krishna, I wanted God, I wanted the absolute truth. And now, I'm cleaning toilets at the Karuna Bhavan. That's not what So like sometimes in the old days, a parent would come and they would see their son or their daughter cleaning a toilet in the temple. And the father would say, especially in America, he said, son, this is not what we paid your college bills for. He said, they're making you into a servant. They're turning you into a servant. Of course, the young son would go, yes, father, that's all I am, a servant. No, son, wake up, wake up, wake up. You're no one's servant. He said, servant is a bad word, isn't it? Nobody wants to be a servant. Everybody wants to be a boss. That's the whole problem. And that's why we have to have big meetings like COP26, because everybody wanted to be the master of material nature. Everybody wanted to be the master of the environment. Instead of harmonizing yourself with the will of God, the will of God is that today you eat porridge. That's the will of God. And why is it the will of God? Because you're in Scotland. And they grow oats. Why do they grow oats? Because there's a lot of oats in porridge. I mean, constitutionally, I think you find there's oats in porridge. There's a lot of oats in Scotland. Why? Because of the weather conditions. You can't eat pasta for breakfast. However, when I'm in Italy, at the Villa Vrindavan temple, it's pasta for breakfast, pasta for lunch, and pasta in the evening. Why? Because it's Italy. They make a lot of pasta. And it comes in from the fields and they make it and people love it. And so everywhere has its own particular flavor. Unless you go with that flavor, you cannot, not everybody can live like a person living in California. But we try to, don't we? And therefore, for me to have my avocados on toast, okay, because I'm cool. For me to have my avocado on toast, you have to ship in avocados from where? Peru or one of those places, okay? Now, how much does it cost actually to get your avocado going across the sea? We have a ship's captain here, Tushar, ship's captain.
Less than 1 penny per avocado.
Less than 1 penny per... No, you're kidding. Really? You spoiled my presentation. You mean there's so many avocados? Oh, no. Less than a penny per avocado.
a very short kind of explanation
Yeah,
is shipping is the least polluting mode of transportation. And just to make our cars in Sunderland,
yeah.
um, those cars aren't made in Sunderland.
I've introduced you as an authority to these very impressionable people at the end of my Srimad Bhagavatam class. I expected cooperation. Instead, what I got was another opinion. But he's an expert. He's an expert. However, if everybody in the world wants an avocado, therefore, I'm just backtracking, food should be from as short a distance as possible. Energy should be from as short a distance as possible. And therefore, Prabhupada told us, he said, use the bulls. They eat something that you can't eat. Grass is useless for you. They produce milk if they're female, power if they're 0.75 horsepower, a bull, 3/4 of a horse. But if you have the horse, it's difficult to milk a horse. Have you tried? You ever tried to milk a horse? Not so good. So Prabhupada wanted our rural communities. I'm not necessarily saying an eco farm in Les Mahego, but he wanted that combination. One time he was in New Vrindavan, and a horse came down the road with a hay. The devotee was trying to impress Prabhupada. So he knew what time Prabhupada was leaving the temple to go back to his house. So at that moment, he just wanted Prabhupada to see him, that he was, taking the horse and cart down. So Prabhupada was in the car and he was looking, and he said something to another Swami that was there. And later on the boy said, what did Prabhupada say? What did Prabhupada say? He said, did he see me? He said, yes, he saw you. And what did he say? He said, Prabhupada said, there goes the death of Vedic civilization. He said, oh, really? He said, yes, he wants cows, he wants bulls. So bull power will give you 2 bulls, will give you enough traction, enough pulling power to go to a market and sell your wares. So, although people sometimes say, you Hare Krishnas, you green people, you vegan people, you want to live in harmony with nature, where will that get us? We'll just be going back to the Stone Age. And we'll say, no, you'll be on a ticket to environmental sustainability. The simple solution. And we have to also think that Prabhupada also wanted peaceful life for people who are not devotees. At least have a happy material life. And much of what Prabhupada says in his books is for how to have a happy spiritual life. So give up, abandon, surrender, accept that you're a bird on a rope. But part of it was just, look, at least if you're not going to take to Krishna consciousness, at least be happy, at least be peaceful. At least you can close the slaughterhouses, because the cancer is killing you. He said, why are you smoking? It's killing you. And we have packets, and on every packet of cigarettes, you can see really grotesque manifestations of what will happen if you don't stop smoking. And still people smoke. Because there's nothing else. If I don't smoke and I don't drink and I don't exploit material nature, I'm not experiencing anything. Happiness must be experienced. Therefore, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. The subtext is that gradually, if you get spiritual happiness, you will find the seesaw. It will make you able to experience less material happiness or less material exploitation. You can only live simply if your spiritual life is developed. And one thing we're noticing in this country, just in my lifetime, how Christianity and church going and religious literacy is diminishing. What's taking its place is horrific. Absolutely horrific. So bring back going to church on a Sunday. Bring back closing the shops on a Sunday. Bring back the wee frees in the kirk in Scotland. We don't mind, we'll cooperate. And then we go one stage further. Our ideas, Prabhu said, well, if you can't get people to come to your church, he said, we'll fill it up for you. He said that in Chicago. He said, now if people are not going to church, give us your church and we will fill the building because we have the formula. But the formula is not to pander to material devices. The formula is to give people spiritual life. Because when you experience spiritual life and you really believe and you really have a substantial experience of spiritual reality, that God is real, only then will you want to go to church. Isn't it? Only that will you want to go to a temple. So every one of you sitting in this room has had a substantial experience that God is real. Otherwise, what are you doing sitting listening to me? What are you doing sitting eating porridge when you could be having avocados on toast? What are you doing subjecting yourself to a 3-day retreat? Okay? Why? Why do it? Because you know that something is there. Yeah. You've come a long way to be here. So you've come many changes on the train, or you've driven a long way. Some of you walking, walking from Les Mahego, from Mangalati. There must be something at the end of it. That's the relationship with Krishna, which is a very real thing. Very real. All right. We should stop here and we'll continue on tomorrow, I believe. Hare Krishna. Just getting warmed up. Now, can I possibly have either Anapayani or Padmalochan to come and tell us what's happening today? Either of you. And the answer may be not much. The answer may be just you're organizing. People are. Is there any specific event happening today? I forget.
No, Maharaj, it's just need people to help chop the vegetables, please, this evening. And
How many people do you need?
I'll ask, I'll find out.
Yeah.
And garland, we need a group of devotees to help make garlands.
Okay. So it sounds like everybody doing something then.
Yeah. And also some people to help tidy up your own hall a bit and help decorate it.
Is that including scrubbing them and mopping them? And chair lifting them? Ancient Sanskrit techniques. This morning? Okay, so you need help with Gauranga Hall this morning? Preferably. So breakfast is now? Should we have breakfast? Oh, it's in the yoga barn. We're no longer using the...
Just because it's a bigger space for the retreat.
Yeah.
With everybody.
Yeah. If everybody this morning can get an opportunity to speak to these stalwart devotees, we have Prabhupada Pran, who's our temple president for the next 3 days. So Hare Krishna. Let's give him a round of applause, actually. I would not be here, like the Pope, if he wasn't there, providing wonderful hospitality for all of us. Somehow or another, we've all found a place somewhere within the spreading complex of Karuna Bhavan, manifesting the mercy there. And then Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu, everybody knows Raghunath Bhatta. At Hokshaja was here. Yeah, give him an applause. Raghunath Bhatta, are you still the only saffron wearer in the project?
Not a couple of days, not on.
Oh, okay.
It's all changing.
Huh?
It's all changing in a couple of days time.
So, what, you're changing in a couple of days time?
We have more saffron there.
Oh, okay. You give me hope. More saffron wearers are coming. That's good. And then who just walked out was at Hokshaja Krishna. And at Hokshaja has been here for how long? 82. 80. 88. So at Hokshaja has been here since 1988 in Scotland. And Prabhupada Pran has been here since 80? Yeah. Okay. Who else have you got? There's really old. Oh, Brenda, who led Jairada Madhava. Brenda, how long have you been here?
Since 92.
92. 92. It doesn't sound a long time ago, but it is. I said 1992 doesn't sound a long time ago to me, but it's actually 30.
So, less than that.
30. Oh, it's almost 30 years, yeah. So true. So if you get a chance to talk to them, please do, because they're wonderful devotees who've kept this project going for the last 30 plus years, which is an amazing thing. And there's no one sitting in this room right now who would be here if it wasn't for them. So they've managed to, COVID hit them, and finances hit them, and different challenges hit them. But they've weathered the storms, come through. Wonderful. Good. We'll do all this again tomorrow because it's just an introductory. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.